A Virtual Pilgrimage, the New Testament. Episode 8, Places of the Deaths and Burials of the Saints. Number 85, the home of Mary in Ephesus. Therefore, when Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing by, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." Then he said to the disciple, Behold your mother." And from that hour that disciple took her into his own home. John 19:26. Tradition holds that the Apostle John took care of Mary as he fled from Palestine following intense persecution under King Agrippa I. John fled to Ephesus with Mary, became a pastor, served there, and took care of Mary in his own home. In 1881, Father Julien Goyer, a French Roman Catholic priest, discovered a small stone building dating to the Byzantine period, and further excavations revealed a first-century dwelling with a small bedroom on one side believed to be Mary's bedroom. It is located on a mountain near the ancient ruins of Ephesus overlooking the Aegean Sea. It was realized that this small stone building without a roof had been venerated by the early church and was frequented by people nearby who were descendants of the original faithful Ephesian Christians, whose ancestors the Apostle John served as leader. Today, pilgrims who come to this home can visit the chapel and write prayers and wishes and attach them to a wishing wall on the grounds of Mary's home. As well, a spring of water flows underneath the home, and pilgrims come and drink its waters. It is believed that these waters have curative properties. Number 86, the Tomb of Mary in Jerusalem. Therefore, when Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing by, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour, that disciple took her to his own home. John 19, verse 26. According to tradition, Mary, the mother of Jesus, traveled to Ephesus along with the Apostle John, who was commissioned with caring for her by Jesus himself. She lived in Ephesus for some time before returning to Jerusalem and dying in and around the year 41 AD. Her body was then taken to the tomb of the Virgin Mary in Jerusalem. Catholic and Orthodox believers believe that she was resurrected, the Assumption, on the third day and later ascended to heaven, so her tomb was empty. This tomb is found at the foot of the Mount of Olives near the Garden of the Gethsemane. In 1972, Bellarmino Bugatti, a Franciscan friar and archaeologist, excavated the site and found a first-century cemetery. A small place of worship, an edicule, was built over the original site of the tomb of Mary. Then a larger octagonal church was built over this in the 5th century, but was destroyed by the Persian invasion of 614 AD. The site was rebuilt and destroyed several times, and in the year 1130, the tomb was rebuilt by the Crusaders, but then later destroyed by Saladin. Finally, in the year 1757, Greek Orthodox clergy expelled the Franciscans. Now the site has been continued to be cared for by the Armenian Orthodox and Greek Orthodox Church of Jerusalem. Number 87. The place of the death of the Apostle James, son of Zebedee. And when he had called his 12 disciples to him, he gave them power over unclean spirits to cast them out, and to heal all kinds of sickness and all kinds of disease. Now the names of the 12 apostles are these: first, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax collector, James the son of Alphaeus and Lebbaeus, whose surname was Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanite, and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him. Matthew 10, 1-4. Now about that time Herod the king stretched out his hand to harass some from the church. Then he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. Acts 12, 1-2. James, son of Zebedee, was a fisherman by trade working in Capernaum when Jesus called him to a lifetime of ministry. He and his brother John were nicknamed Boanerges, or Sons of Thunder. He was a strong leader of the church, and by order of King Herod Agrippa I in 44 AD, James was beheaded in Jerusalem. The Roman officer who guarded James watched amazed as James defended his faith at his trial. Later, this officer walked beside James to the place of execution. Overcome by conviction, he declared his new Christian faith to the judge and knelt beside James to accept beheading as a Christian. This took place in the location that is now St. James Church in Jerusalem. Number 88. The place of the burial of the Apostle James, son of Zebedee, in Spain. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much grain. John 12:24. Some traditions hold that James had gone previously to preach the gospel in Iberia, modern Spain. So his decapitated body was transferred by believers from Jerusalem to the tomb within what is now the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela, Spain. In Spanish, James is Santiago, and he's the patron saint of Spain. Many Christians from around the world make an 800-kilometer pilgrimage on the Camino de Santiago from a small town in France to just beyond Santiago de Compostela, remembering the life of that faithful apostle James, or Santiago, who is the patron saint of Spain. Number 89. The place of the martyrdom of the Apostle Matthew. And when he had called his 12 disciples to him, he gave them power over unclean spirits to cast them out, and to heal all kinds of sickness and all kinds of disease. Now the names of the 12 apostles are these: first, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax collector, James the son of Alphaeus and Lebbaeus, whose surname was Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanite, and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him. Matthew 10, 1-4. Saint Matthew, or Levi, son of Alphaeus, was a tax collector by profession, and sat and received taxes from his place of occupation in Capernaum. As a tax collector, he was literate in both Aramaic and Greek. He invited Jesus to his home for a feast with other tax collectors and sinners. According to Irenaeus and Clement of Alexandria, Matthew preached the gospel of Jesus Christ to the Jews living in Judea following the ascension of Jesus Christ, before going to other countries. It was Matthew who was credited to writing the first gospel according to Papias of Hierapolis, 100-140 AD. Ethiopian church tradition states that Matthew, along with Bartholomew, came to Ethiopia for a mission that lasted 3 months. Tradition holds that King Hyrtacus had Matthew killed because he wished to marry a convent abbess named Iphigenia, and the apostle Matthew forbade it as she was dedicated to Christ. It was in Ethiopia, or Cush, that the apostle Matthew was martyred for his faith by being killed with a halberd in the city of Nadaba, as recounted in Fox's Book of Martyrs in 60 AD. It would make sense that it was in Napata, because this was the capital of the Cush kingdom, and it was here that the king of Cush reigned. In 1916, American archaeologist and Harvard professor of Egyptology George A. Reisner made excavations of the city of Napata, capital of the Cush kingdom, and uncovered the royal palace from which the king who killed Matthew reigned. Number 90. The burial place of the Apostle Matthew. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much grain. John 12, verse 24. Matthew was killed by halberd in Napata, the capital of the Cush kingdom. Then his remains were transported in 1084 AD and interred in a crypt in the Salerno Cathedral in Italy. The Salerno Cathedral is richly decorated in gold, with many depictions of the life of Jesus Christ as told in the Gospel of Matthew, and is a major tourist attraction. Number 91. The place of the death of the Apostle James, son of Alphaeus. And when he had called his 12 disciples to him, he gave them power over unclean spirits to cast them out, and to heal all kinds of sickness and all kinds of disease. Now the names of the 12 apostles are these: first, Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax collector, James the son of Alphaeus and Lebbaeus, whose surname was Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanite, and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him. Matthew 10, 1-4. James the Less is different from James the son of Zebedee, being the son of Alphaeus. There is not much known about the life of James the Less, but he is often confused with James the brother of Jesus. According to some traditions, James the Less was the first bishop of Syria. He had made missionary travels through Judea, Edessa, Gaza, and Illythiopolis, preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. Tradition maintains that James the Less was captured under charges of having violated the laws of Moses. He was then crucified at Ostrakhan in Lower Egypt, where he was preaching the gospel in 62 AD. Afterward, his body was later sawn to pieces. His remains are located at the Santi Apostoli Church in Rome, Italy. Number 92. The place of the remains of the Apostle Philip and James the Less. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much grain. John 12:24. James the Less was crucified at Ostrakhan in Lower Egypt, where he was preaching the gospel in 62 AD. Afterwards, his body was later sawn to pieces. The supposed remains of St. James included fragments of femur and a tibia bone. When the bones were dated by carbon-14, they were shown to have belonged to a person who lived between 214 and 340 AD. So these remains could not have belonged to St. James the son of Alphaeus. However, the mummified foot of St. Philip was not tested and therefore could be a legitimate relic of the disciple. Both the relics of supposed St. James and Philip are located in a box in the basement of the Church of Santi Apostoli in Rome. What would be interesting to do is to excavate the ruins of Ostrakhan to see if the tomb of St. James the Less is there. Future excavation would certainly be of value not only to history in general, but to the Christian faith in Egypt. Number 93. The place of the martyrdom of the Apostle Simon Peter. And when he had called his 12 disciples to him, he gave them power over unclean spirits to cast them out, and to heal all kinds of sickness and all kinds of disease. Now the names of the 12 apostles are these: first, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax collector, James the son of Alphaeus, and Lebbaeus, whose surname is Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanite, and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him. Matthew 10, 1-4. Simon was the son of Jonah and the brother of Andrew. He was from the town of Bethsaida, a fishing village near the Sea of Galilee. He was married and moved to Capernaum, where he made his living from the fishing trade. He was the disciple who was there with Jesus, with James and John at the Transfiguration, and who called Jesus the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus changed Simon's name to Peter. It was Peter who was the leader of the apostles. Although he denied Jesus at first, he repented, then preached the gospel to many Jews in Jerusalem on the day of Pentecost. It is also believed that Peter was the source of the Gospel of Mark. He traveled on a missionary journey to Lydda, Joppa, and Caesarea. Then he was sent to Samaria by the disciples in Jerusalem. Then Peter was imprisoned in Jerusalem by Herod Agrippa I, AD 42 to 44, but escaped miraculously by an angel. Then he left Jerusalem in the mid-40s. Strangely, the Apostle Paul, when writing to the Romans in his epistle in 57 AD, although mentioning about 50 believers, he does not mention St. Peter, the presumed bishop of the church in Rome. According to tradition, he became the bishop of Rome, then was martyred under the Emperor Nero in 62 AD. Tradition maintains that he was crucified upside down in what is now the Clementine Chapel, and was buried in St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican City, Italy. Number 94. The burial place of the Apostle Simon Peter. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much grain. John 12:24. Another possibility for the burial of St. Peter is that his corpse was taken from Rome and brought to Jerusalem, to the Mount of Olives, Dominus Flevit, and his bones collected in an ossuary. This ossuary was found by Father Dr. Bellarmino Bagatti and bears the inscription, Simon, son of Jonah, and is in Burial Cave 79, where a Chi Rho symbol was found, the symbol of 1st century Christianity. However, Catholic tradition maintains that he was crucified upside down in what is now the Clementine Chapel, and was buried in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, Italy. An ossuary of Simon, son of Jonah in Jerusalem would be very astonishing for Catholics who maintain that the body of Simon Peter has always been buried in Rome and not in Jerusalem. However, the ossuary remains at the Terra Sancta Museum, Church of the Flagellation, Jerusalem. As well, in tomb number 70, they found an ossuary bearing the names Mary and Martha, who were both from Bethany, as mentioned in detail in the Gospels. Their findings were published in 1958 in Gli Scavi del Dominus Flevit, Parte Uno, along with Father J.T. Millick, an expert in ancient languages and who was central to deciphering the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is direct physical evidence from the 1st century of the existence of Simon, son of Jonah, Mary, and Martha. Number 95. The place of the martyrdom of the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul, I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. 2 Timothy 4, verse 7. Saul of Tarsus was a man who was driven by zeal for the law of God. Trained as a Pharisee under Gamaliel, he saw the new Christian faith as something to eradicate and passionately sought to arrest all Christians. While on his way to arrest Christians in Damascus, he was met by Jesus Christ in a vision and was converted into a Christian, the very faith he once tried to destroy. The Lord Jesus called him to be an apostle, just like the 12 apostles, to found churches, to oversee and place leaders in the churches, and to go to places where the gospel was previously unknown. Of the 27 books of the New Testament, St. Paul wrote 13 and possibly 14 of them. After his conversion, he went to Cyprus, Asia Minor, then to Greece, Malta, then to Italy and Rome, where he was under house arrest. He possibly then went to Spain to bring the gospel, then was arrested again and put in the Mamertine prison in Rome a second time and condemned to death by the Emperor Nero. It was from here that he wrote the second letter to Timothy. From here, Clement, Bishop of Rome, wrote in 95 AD that Paul was beheaded outside Rome at the third milestone on the road to Ostia. Legend says that his severed head bounced 3 times, and at each spot a spring flowed out. Even today, 3 fountains flow within the church. This place is called the Abbazia delle Tre Fontane, or the Abbey or Church of the 3 Fountains. Number 96. The place of the burial of the Apostle Paul. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much grain. John 12:24. At the time of the execution of St. Paul, Bishop of Rome, Clement wrote, "Weeping friends took his corpse and carried it for burial to the subterranean labyrinths, the catacombs. St. Paul's body was buried in the tomb of a woman named Lucina. The Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls in Rome was initially built around the tomb of the Apostle by Emperor Constantine in 324 AD. In 2006, as the tomb was excavated, the 8-foot stone coffin of St. Paul was discovered that dated back to 390 AD. The inscription of the tombstone reads in Latin, Paulo Apostolo Mart, which means Apostle Paul Martyr. In 2009, carbon-14 tests on bone fragments contained within the coffin confirmed that they belonged to someone who lived from the 1st to 2nd centuries. This is indeed the bones of St. Paul the Apostle, who brought the gospel to the Gentile world.